Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the Public Health Careers Post-Grad Workshop. It'll be hosted by yours truly, peer academic advisors. We hope that you guys are able to take away a lot of information, tools, and resources to further your academic pursuits. So enjoy the workshop.
So our workshop is broken up into 4 different parts. First, we're going to start with some introductions of our 2 hosts, and then we're going to talk about some traditional and non-traditional careers for public health policy and sciences. We'll go more into detail in that section. And then we'll go over some resources that you can use to find those careers, jobs, internships, whatever you need to fulfill those. And then we're going to end it with an alumni panel and Q&A session.
So hello, everybody. My name is Emma Nguyen. I am one of the peer academic advisors. I am a 4th year public health policy major. And in the future, I hope to pursue a career in academic advising. Still working out what kind of advising I want to do, but ultimately I want to work in higher education and work all the way up to administration.
And my name is Ali Al-Hakim. I am a 4th year public health sciences and business administration double major. I'm also one of your PAAs for this year. And I plan to be a researcher and consultant in viral therapeutics, specifically about repurposing drugs. So first off, all the careers that we're going to list in the both traditional and non-traditional segments is not everything. They're not everything that you can pick from. Many other careers you can follow and pursue. We're just going to list a couple that we think are some of the most common, or maybe are the most related to what you're learning about in your majors. So first up, we're going to talk about the traditional careers in science and policy. So you can imagine that these courses or these careers would have very similar tasks as to what you do in your classes. So for policy, you would be reading, writing, analyzing policy, such as for program directors, analysts, and advisors. And these people can work both in government organizations, like let's say the LA County, or they can work for nonprofit organizations. And as for sciences, it's very similar to the biosci track, where you can follow a medical field such as nursing or an MD or physical therapy. You can also go into research or epidemiology. So some people I'd like to note, on the top here, we have Dr. Barbara Ferrer. If some of you live in the SoCal area, you might have seen her on the TV. She is the director of public health for LA County, and she has an MPH. She came from an education background. She has an EDD, and she's been in public health and advocacy for most of her career. And on the bottom here, I'm sure you've seen this guy maybe once or twice. This is Dr. Fauci. He's more of the sciences path, where he got his degree as an MD in immunology. And now he's the director of the NIAID, and he pursues research and he follows what other people tell him, let's say for economics or psychology, to develop programs for emerging diseases. So these are just some of the traditional careers, as I've mentioned before. There are plenty of others that you can choose from, but these are just some that would be more of a direct connection between what you're learning and what you'd actually be doing.
So now we're going to go more into the non-traditional careers. Just remember that public health is a very broad topic and major, and a lot of the skills and lessons that you've learned from this major can be applied to many different fields. So like Ali said, you're not limited to what we have listed on here. You can pretty much apply whatever you learn to anything you want. So some of the things I've listed for you guys is education, which is you can become a professor of public health. You can work as a teacher or administration in higher education like I want to. You can do project management, politics, social work. A lot of your skills and knowledge, such as like health intervention, health disparities, things you learn about like racial injustice or environmental racism, a lot of these topics are very applicable to real world situations nowadays, and especially in our today's society. So some people that I want to know as well is our very own Bernadette M. Bolden Albala. She is the director and founding dean of the program in public health at UCI. She is very well known with her involvements in multiple political interventions and her experiences as a professor of population health and disease prevention and epidemiology, neurology. These are great examples of how you can use public health towards education and also administration. The second person is Robert S. McNamara. He was the head of the World Bank and he dedicated lots of projects towards education, food, and health. His most well-known projects were the Maternity and Child Program and also the Family Welfare Program. He was also the Secretary of Defense during Kennedy's presidency, so he's a great figure to learn through his work in politics and just like projects towards public health endeavors. So now we're going to go over some resources for you guys to use to find internships and jobs, either during your undergrad or also after you graduate. So the four we're going to go over are Handshake, LinkedIn, the Public Health Career tab, and Career Pathways. So first, we're going to highlight what Handshake is. So the way you access Handshake, you can go to career.uci.edu. It'll take you to UCI's Division of Career Pathways website. And in the bottom right corner, you'll see that it says job and internship postings. And then you'll just sign in through there. You'll either have to make an account, or if you already have an account, you'll just sign in. It'll take you to Handshake. Another way you can also access Handshake is just by Googling like UCI Handshake and it should pop up. So once you enter Handshake's website, this is what you'll see. This is the dashboard. And as you can see, it'll have different tabs such as like jobs, employers, and events. This is a great way for you to build your connections, find job openings, and also find events that will host different job openings that are posted. The great thing about Handshake is that they'll have different filters that you can use that can, where you pick your interests. So you can put whether you're looking for an internship or a job, whether it's part-time, full-time, temporary, or permanent. And then you can also click things that you're interested in. So let's say you're interested in healthcare or education. It'll go ahead and filter out a bunch of different careers that are hiring right now, and you can go ahead and apply for them. It's a really quick and easy way to find job openings, and it's also a great way for you to find internships if you're still in school. And then the next one we're going to go to is the Public Health Careers tab. So to access the Public Health Careers tab, you can just type in the website publichealth.uci.edu, and it'll take you to the home page for UCI's program in public health. Another way you can do it too is just Googling UCI public health and it should come up. You can go to the About tab and scroll down a little, and then it'll say Career Resources, and then you can just click that. And it should take you to this page right here. They have a bunch of different tabs and resources for you to just kind of click through and play through, and it'll show you a bunch of ways that you can get information about different job openings as well. So as you can see, some of them is like the World Health Organization employment. There's Public Health Employment Connection. So this is also another great resource for you to learn about more information, resources, get connections, and that way you can also broaden your knowledge and information on different careers in public health.
All right, thank you, Emma. So now we're going to talk about the other two options we have, LinkedIn and Career Pathways. And for these two options, we're actually going to do a live demonstration so we can show you more of what you'll be expecting. So first off, we're going to do LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, if you're unfamiliar with it, is essentially a professional version of, let's say, Facebook, where you get to friend other people, and in LinkedIn they call it you connect with other people. And here you essentially make an online resume you put your profile up here, and then people can connect with you and other business professionals can connect with you. And then they get to see your resume right up front, right there on your profile. They don't have to ask you for it. You don't have to send it. It's already there. So as an example, I'll go ahead and show mine. When you make your own account, it's going to ask you for a name, put in some pictures, what job you currently have, where you live, and so on and so forth. You get to put in a summary about yourself. You can either do it in the first or third person based on preference. And then you get to fill in your experiences section, very similar to how you'd fill in a resume. So you would put in what you're currently doing or what you have done, and then you'd list some of the tasks that you've done, how long you've been there, just like how you would do on a resume. And similarly, you put education and volunteer experiences. So putting everything on here, it kind of keeps everything up to date. And when you are connecting or you're meeting different professionals, you can give them your LinkedIn account or your LinkedIn link. So let's say they give you a business card or you want to give them a business card, and you can have your link on there, or you can have it in the signature of your emails. That way they have access to it right there as well. Something that recruiters also do when you go in for an interview is that they themselves will look up your LinkedIn account to see if you have one and if it's professionally done or not. So having a LinkedIn account is really, really beneficial. It looks really good professionally when you are going out into the world looking for these careers. There's also a section here called jobs, and it's a very similar to how Handshake is done, where you can filter what you want. Here you can filter if you want an internship, a full-time position, part-time position, very similar to Handshake, but this one is more broad and accessible to everyone, whereas Handshake is more of a UCI exclusive one. So this is LinkedIn. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the Career Pathways tab. So this one is the UCI division of Career Pathways. You've seen this screenshot already for the Handshake. You can see it right here, the same corner, job and internship postings. So this one is a department at UCI where they have a bunch of career counselors ready to assist you. And they also have a lot of career guides available to you as well. So that's going to be a couple of things that I'm going to be showing to you right now. So if we go here, career.uci.edu, or you could just search up UCI DCP or UCI Career. In the undergraduate section, there's something here called Career Guides, and DCP has taken the time to list anything and everything that you have questions about relating to careers. So if you have a question about Handshake, they have something here about Handshake, and then sometimes they'll have videos available, and then they'll have a guide for you to follow. So if I were to click on this, here they tell me what's Handshake, how to get started, and how to use it. And Handshake does this. So this is where you can learn about Handshake, and they have career guides like this for many, many things. So you see there's one for CV to resume, interview prep, some about graduate school, internships. So this, I think, is a really, really good place to start if you want to know a little bit more about what should I be preparing for an internship? What kind of places should I go, let's say, for my gap year? Or how should I be finding an on-campus job if that's what you want? This is a really, really good resource for you to look at. Another thing that I want to highlight here is the Meet with Us. So you can actually book an appointment with one of these counselors. It's a 15-minute appointment, 15 to 30-minute appointment. And you can book it right on Handshake. So the website that we showed you before, you can book it right on there, and you'll have an appointment with them, and they'll go over some career advising with you. And the last thing that I'd want to point out is that they have a lot of events every quarter. So if I go over to their events calendar, you can see that they have a writing resume next week. They have a virtual career fair prep for next week, and so on and so forth. They have something every single day or multiple things per day as well. So this is also a fantastic opportunity for you to learn more about, let's say, what you want to know about internships or how to have a good resume or how to have a good LinkedIn profile. This is a really, really good place for you to look as well. With that, I'm going to go back into the presentation. Something that we want to highlight to you is DCP. Next week, they are having their own internship and career virtual fair. Here, you can sign up for it, register for it on Handshake. You can also go to the DCP website and follow the registering events over there. and it's next week, Thursday from 10 to 3. And they have a list of 56 different employers that you can go and talk to. So I highly recommend that from now until then, if you're interested in looking for an internship or a job after you graduate, that you look up the different employers that will be at this event and do a little bit of research on who they are and what they're looking for, so that when you attend this virtual fair, you are ready to go and you have your handshake ready or you have your LinkedIn ready and you know you have a game plan going in.
So now we're going to introduce the alumni panel. We're going to go have them introduce their name, their career, and a short little summary about how they got to the career they're at right now. And we'll go ahead and give it off to Madeline first.
Hi. Hi everyone. I'll go ahead and just quickly introduce myself. My name is Madeline Dumao. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently an academic advisor for UCI's program in public health. My major during the time I was at UCI was public health policy, and I double majored with education sciences with a specialization in digital media and learning, and I graduated with the class of 2019. Just to confirm, do I continue, by the way, or do I hand it off to Shelby in terms of intro?
You can continue.
Okay, sorry. But anyways, in terms of, how I got to where I am today and in terms of my background, so as I mentioned, I did graduate with public health policy and education, but today I am currently working in academic advising, which is specifically with student affairs and in education. So in terms of how did I where did I begin? I would say it all began with my involvements at UCI. So during my time at UCI, I got really involved with the different organizations on campus, and I also worked part-time. And in the beginning of my career at UCI, during my first year, I actually applied to be a center attendant with student housing at Mesa Court. And I would say that was the very beginning of when I got involved with student affairs. In the beginning of the time I was at UCI, student affairs was something I wasn't aware of as a career path until I got more involved at UCI. So in terms of my involvements, I worked for student housing at UCI for 3 years, and that's when I really found my passion for working with students. And then throughout those years, of course, as I was working on my my double major, I also found the the job of peer academic advising. That was during my junior year, and then it was really during my senior year, actually, when I was an academic advisor for peer academic advising, when I truly knew that I wanted to work in student affairs. So I think what's really awesome about, well, first of all, undergrad specifically, is that no matter what major you pursue, there are many passions that you can have. So even though, yes, I majored in public health policy and education, and I'm still passionate about public health and education, I also found different passions based on the involvements that I had at UCI. Besides being involved in student housing and being a peer academic advisor, I also had various internships throughout my time at UCI. And I think from those internships, I also found different skills that today I'm able to apply in my current job as an academic advisor. So in terms of one of my first internships that I had at UCI, I actually found this through a career fair. So as everyone mentioned earlier, I highly recommend going to career fairs, and also highly recommend really utilizing the online resources that UCI has, such as Handshake and also LinkedIn. For things like Handshake, those resources, you actually only have that as a UCI student. Once you graduate, you actually have to pay for those services. So during the time I was a student at UCI, Public Health Association actually held this annual summit, which I believe they still hold every year. And I actually attended one of the first ones that they had. And at the Public Health Association Summit, they had a career fair where they had various practicum site internship, what's it called? sorry, the different sites that we have, a lot of the representatives were there. And so I think this was around my second year at UCI. I mean, I went just to see, you know, what I could find. But because I was able to go and actually talk to those representatives, I was really able to see, you know, what my interests might be. And from there, I found my friend, I applied for my first internship because I reached out to the representatives that were there. And after reaching out to them and having an interview, I was able to get an internship. This was with March of Dimes, and they are a nonprofit organization. That was during my second year. And through this internship, I was actually able to find experience in nonprofit. And through that, I learned more about program coordinating, and also administrative duties, administrative tasks, and also really increasing my communication skills with all the different tasks that I had there. In addition to that, as I learned more about different public health careers, I also learned more about the different opportunities that public health has to offer. So I got involved with research during my third and fourth year. So during my third year, we had this clinical and translational research program that was available. And then during my senior year, I actually got involved with the public health honors research program. So I really looked at these different opportunities and took advantage of them. And through that, I was really able to, again, learn more about the different careers that I can be involved in. But in addition to that, really learning about different skills that I can later apply within the career that I, you know, did end up pursuing. In addition to that, another internship that I had during my time at UCI was with the American Heart Association. I was really involved with them during my third and fourth year. And I think during this time is when I really learn more about my leadership skills and my management skills. And again, this is another example of a public health internship that I had. And then in addition to that, I was still involved with being on campus, and I, again, worked on campus as a peer academic advisor during that time. So in terms of, you know, how did I get to where I am today? It was really through all those different involvements. Even though, yes, those internships that I had were more focused on the public health side of things, because of course I was a public health major, the management skills that I learned, the connections that I made, all of that has really helped me today as an academic advisor with all of the tasks and duties and responsibilities that I have as an advisor. But in terms of my passion for student affairs, it was really through my part-time job as a peer academic advisor, where I knew that I wanted to continue my path in student affairs. So as much as I did love public health and all the opportunities that I had as a public health student, during my senior year when I was a peer academic advisor, I really learned more about the different campus resources that were available on campus, the importance of really connecting students with those resources. And that's what I found was a career that I wanted to pursue. So I guess just to kind of summarize what I learned through all of that, number one was definitely taking advantage of opportunities and really being involved. So even though I had all these different opportunities that maybe were not as involved in my career, again, you know, being kind of a non-traditional career for public health, right? All of those skills are applicable to my current career today. Again, communication, leadership, and management. In addition to that, I would say another thing I really learned throughout those experiences is really building connections and having a strong support system. So throughout the times that I was involved in these different internships and opportunities, I really put an effort in getting to know the people that I was working with, no matter if that was in my part-time job or in my internships or even my extracurriculars on campus. Building those connections and asking questions really allowed me to see what careers I can go into and really learn more about how I can get into those careers. So for example, when I was a peer academic advisor, I talked to my academic advisors during that time, learned about how they got into their career and what steps they took in order to pursue their current career. In addition to that, even though for my public health internships, I work, even though today I work in education, learning about what my coworkers or other fellow interns were pursuing, that really allowed me to see if those were careers that I also were interested in still pursuing, and also learning about, again, the connection, building those connections, and seeing if that's something I still want to pursue. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of talk about was applying everything you learn to everything you do. No matter what internship you may get, I think the importance of finding these internships and opportunities is really learning from them, even if it's something that you may find you might not want to do in the future. I think that's actually what's really special about, for example, our practicum internship requirement for the major, is that even if, let's say, you didn't have the best experience, that only puts you a step closer to finding what is right for you. So anyways, I think that kind of wraps up how I got to where I am. And yeah, thank you.
All right. I think, am I next? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Shelby Lee. I got, mine's pretty simple. I graduated in 2019 as well with a degree in public health science. I am currently back at UCI in the graduate school for School of Nursing. So I am getting, it's a master's entry program of nursing with a emphasis on population and community health. So I'm still stuck with the public health outlook on everything we're doing, which is particularly interesting in the current world we're living through. While I was a student at UCI, I was also involved in athletics. So I kind of have a different perspective for what I got involved with there. I know that throughout my time in athletics, I was really passionate about leadership. So that was one of the ways that I got into just becoming a leader and growing as a leader. And that's something I look to continue to grow throughout my future. That's a really big, and team player, that's like a big thing I got from the athletic side, which is how I'm going to translate that into my nursing career as well. So though I don't have a lot of tips on how to be a nurse yet, because I'm still in the process of getting there, the whole graduate school post bachelor's is something that does take a lot of time and research. So any questions you guys have, feel free to ask me, but I'm going to be UCI double time after I get done with this, and I graduate in 2022. So looking forward to answering some of your guys' questions.
All right, so it looks like it's on to me. I'm experiencing some internet issues, so please bear with me if I cut in and out. But my name is Thomas Moa. I am a project coordinator at the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependency of Orange County. I graduated UCI in 2017 with the degree in public health policy. And I would say that when I was at UCI, something that was a big part of my life was the Hmong Student Association, which is a cultural association that I was a part of all 4 years. I was able to become one of the executive board members, and that really has, I would say, shaped my life in that it allowed me to have a leadership position, and it was a very hands-on leadership position. So we were able to really develop who we would be as a future coordinator or a future manager. So in that role, I really gained a lot of experience. And I was also very fortunate that for my public health practicum, I was able to get a site that was very small. And so while I was working there, the supervisor really got to know me, and she suggested that I stay on as a volunteer afterwards, which I know is very rare. But in that time, I was able to learn a lot about the job. So it was basically on the job training. The supervisor really trusted me, so she left me with a lot of responsibilities that you typically wouldn't leave to an intern or a volunteer. And so through that, I got enough experience where when there was a vacancy, I was personally recommended for that position. So in my 4th year of college, I was working part-time and studying, so it was very hard and it was very stressful. But afterwards, I became a full-time case manager at my very first job. And my first job was not a very traditional public health job, but at the time, it was something that I needed to help build my resume, and it was something that helped build my skills as well. And so my leadership skills from leading an organization transferred directly to case management, where I developed these skills even further. And then I was able to apply for this project coordinator position with NCADDOC because of all the built up experience I've had. And so basically what I would have to say to everyone is, if you're not sure what career you want to do going out of college, that's okay. You know, not all of us have what we want to do planned out. I never thought that I would end up as a project coordinator for a tobacco program, but here I am. And for interviewing, pretty much I would just say that be honest, but be true to your strengths. So if you have any kind of leadership experience, if you have any experience, you know, leading, then go ahead and talk about that, because that's what employers love to see.
All right, awesome. Thank you, alumni, for those introductions and a little bit of background of what you do. I'm going to go ahead and ask another question for you all to answer. We're going to start with Thomas and work our way left. So are there any courses or extracurricular activities during your time at UCI that you decided not to take, or you didn't know at the time that you could have participated in these that would have helped you where you are now?
Yeah, I actually would have joined the Public Health Association on campus, but at the time I was just so swamped that I could not make meetings. So I wish I was able to join and make those connections, because connections are a very important part in getting a career.
I would say for me, I think I definitely the involvement on the other side of campus, because I was super involved with athletics and I did a lot of work with like the NCAA and stuff. But I think I could have benefited from having more relationships, especially with like professors, because I needed letters of rec if you're applying to grad school, and it's much easier to create a like relationship with a professor, so they know you, they know what you're good at, and that way they can write an honest letter of rec, because academic letter of recs hold a lot of weight in grad school. So I think that is something that I look back on and was like, oh, I probably should have done a lot more making connections. But I mean, it's also hard because it's like there's not like unlimited time, as mentioned by Thomas. So it's a balance of what you can do and what you can do in the best way. Because I think sometimes if you're trying to get your hands in everything, you're not necessarily being the best at everything you're doing. So you kind of pick and choose so that you can be a better version of yourself in those moments. So I say that looking back, but I don't know if I were to go through it again, I feel like I would still be as motivated as in the things I was doing currently, but definitely involvement. And I mean, I tried to almost study abroad, but I didn't quite go through with it because I stayed. But if any of you studied abroad, I'm sure that was like super fun and enlightening, because I really wanted to do it, but I didn't quite get everything lined up perfectly. So that's something that would have been fun.
For me, I also have to agree with Thomas. I wish I was more involved with Public Health Association. I did attend some other events, but I wasn't able to be as involved in the organization. But they've grown so much in the last few years, and they continue to make such great events. And I do wish I was able to be more involved in their club. And in terms of student affairs, I would say, well, I was working part-time all 4 years, so I didn't have, as much time really to get as involved with so many different resources. But I think it would have been really fun to be more involved with the Division of Career Pathways, for example, and just other student resources, because I work so closely with all of them now as an advisor. So it would have been, I'm sure it would have been very fun to intern with them during my time at ECI.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the next question, but I did want to let all the students know that the recording for this presentation will be posted on the public health website sometime next week. And then after we ask the general questions, we will open the floor up to all students so that you guys can ask what you would like to the alumni. But the second question I wanted to ask is, what advice have you been given that could help those who are struggling to figure out what career to pursue? And we can go ahead and let Malin go first, and then to Shelby and Thomas.
I would definitely say putting yourself out there is one of the best advice. I was gonna say best, but also sometimes scary, right? One of the best advice that I've gotten, but also one of the scariest, because there's going to be moments where you don't want to put yourself out there, and times where you might be afraid to speak up, right? But I think that's definitely one of the best advice that I've gotten, and also being pushed to speak up is something that I really appreciated now, where getting to where I am today, because that really pushed me to be more confident in myself and not being afraid to ask questions, and also being involved. Being involved doesn't mean just taking advantage of opportunities, but also really immersing yourself in those different opportunities and really putting in a lot of effort to build connections within those various spaces that you get involved in. So I would say learning to really speak up for myself and asking those questions really helped me to learn more and also grow within the different spaces I was involved in.
Those are all great points. I think opportunities is something that is another great one to hit on. You can keep an open mind and opportunities, then you might just land on something. Because I think for me, I was fortunate in the fact that I knew I wanted to go into nursing once I was done with my undergraduate degree. So I kind of aimed my education to kind of hit on a lot of the prereqs and stuff for nursing, but I still went to the grad fairs, and I still talked with different companies, because I thought it was going to be beneficial for me if, say, I never ever got into nursing school, or something happened where I saw blood and decided that wasn't for me, or say COVID hit and I was like, why would I ever go into nursing now? That's not the case. But it's okay to like keep your options open and also try things. I think one of the cool things about LinkedIn and these career pathways, I'm not sure on the other ones, but LinkedIn, you can send messages to people. So if you find somebody that's in a career and you're like, oh, I kind of want to do that, or I'm interested in what their daily or their weekly requirements are. Like, a lot of times it's pretty interesting. People will like when you ask them questions. If you're like, hey, I want to be like you when I grow up, how do I do it? Or what is it like to have this job? Like, asking those questions of the people in those positions, sometimes you get the answers that you need without having to work in it for 5 years and deciding that's not what you like to do. So I think being open to like mentorship or just asking questions will help sort out that unclarity that you might be feeling. Because trust me, there's everybody that graduates college is like, very few have it like perfectly lined up. There's a lot more, you have a lot more in common with, I think, the majority of people graduating undergraduate. I'll pass it on to you, Thomas.
Yeah, I just like to highlight what Shelby and Madeline said, in that take opportunities and ask questions and speak up, because that's how people know who you are. For example, taking opportunities, I never would have thought that I would be getting a job after my practicum. And I wouldn't have gotten that job if I didn't ask questions from my supervisor. And I was very upfront with what I didn't know. And so she basically trained me in the job, and that continued afterwards. And then I saw the opportunity to be in my position now. And, if you'd asked me 4 years ago in college, where I would be. I would never say that I'll be a project coordinator. So you definitely have to take those opportunities, even if they're very frightening, because honestly, everyone's basically at the same point graduating college. Like Shelby said, we don't all know what we want to do after college, right? Some of us are just figuring it out as we go. And that's basically what I would have to say to everybody.
Okay, so for the last question from the peer academic advisors before we give it up to the students, what are some of the best tips that you have learned when it comes to preparing for an interview? And we'll go ahead and let Thomas go first, then Shelly, then Madeline.
So this tip is like neither here nor there, but something that I love to tell people is to, if you are shy or you're not really good at making eye contact, you can actually like interview yourself by looking in the mirror. It's really uncomfortable if you're not used to it, but you're basically forced to look at yourself in the eyes as you speak. And that's a really big one, is just being very confident in how you present yourself. And because a lot of the times you do have the qualifications if they're calling you in for an interview, and they're really just checking if you fit with the culture of their organization. So if you're confident and you bring the best of yourself, then they'll love you.
Simple as that. Just be yourself. And I would say the times I've done interviews, because with grad school I did a few interviews as well, and so you might experience those beyond just the job market. I always felt better when I, dressed the part. I think there's a lot of times where they don't have a necessary requirement or something like that, but if you, that classic look good, feel good, do good, I think the more professional you feel, that sometimes the better you portray yourself. I found that to be super helpful. And really trying your best to convey who you are is also something that I think is really important, because that is, they're trying to figure out who you are, and they might ask you 5 questions, and it's like, well, that's pretty hard to do. So try to keep yourself in there in some ways. And then also when you're interviewing, it's okay to be interviewing them as well. I think that's something that is lost sometimes, where people think it's only about how they're perceiving me, but sometimes you might have a strong perception of what's being like asked to you, or the feelings that don't feel quite right. So I would say go into interviews knowing it's like a two-way thing, not just them looking at you. And that's really important too, especially if you're looking into careers where you're going to be spending most of your time, really. So that's it. Just be yourself. It's hard, and I think everybody gets nervous, but it's understandable. And practice, I think that was one of the things, which is a bit unfortunate, because I'm not sure how they're going to do it with the virtual career fairs, but maybe you guys can speak to that later. But I know when I did the career fairs, I walked around, shook hands, talked to people. Even though it wasn't a formal interview, it was that practice of talking in a professional manner and shaking hands, looking in the eyes, which I know COVID, you can't shake hands, but practice with people that wash their hands and work on the handshakes. But little things like that, finding ways to have conversations in ways that are more professional aimed, can be helpful as well.
So Shelby and Thomas really hit the main points. Definitely, again, practice in front of a mirror and continue to practice. But in addition to that, I highly recommend doing research on what you're applying for. And when I mean research, I mean really looking at the job description and also looking into the company or organization that you're applying for. Because the more that you show the panel that you know about their company, the more they're going to want you, and the more they're going to think this person really knows what they're talking about, or they really already know about what the company is about. And that's one way to really impress the panel when you're in your interview. And then in addition to that, just again, practice is really important. If you start your interview process, you'll notice that there are some questions that are very common in a lot of interviews. For example, introduce yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. Those are some really common questions asked in a lot of different interviews. So just even Googling those questions and practicing them beforehand can really help you during your interview, so that as you begin to get more questions, you don't get lost, right? Because I know that during an interview, if you're a little bit nervous about it, which is again, which is totally normal. At least because you've practiced, you already kind of have an idea of what you want to talk about.
Thank you so much for answering our questions. So now, students, if you have any questions for the alumni, you can unmute yourself, you can put it in the chat,